You see, the truth is that I didn't go to college, barely graduated high school. I'm not an engineer. I'd like to refer to myself as just kind of a dork with a breadboard, meaning that I played guitar since I was 7, and I always like to take things apart. I always like to kind of mess with things and work with my hands. And so, as such, for fun, I started taking apart old Boss pedals and replacing capacitors and diodes and all that fun stuff around 2001 or 2 or so. So I was just kind of doing some very simple modifications, reading on a lot of forums about how other people were doing mods, bought some books like The Art of Electronics, which I highly recommend if you want to dig down deep into a lot of analog stuff. And I just kind of started figuring things out, building things on my breadboard. I've showed you a picture of my breadboard before. It's a big mess of wires that has stuff going everywhere that you put parts in. You could build a circuit without soldering pretty quick. So I would just build stuff like that, play through it, test it, swap things around, and just kind of really experiment. That lasted for about, I would say, probably 2 or 3 years. That I literally just experimented with different kinds of audio circuits. And I would build things, and I was playing in Nashville at the time, Tennessee, with a band. And I would take stuff there and have it on my pedal board and loan stuff to other guitar players and sell things here or there on eBay. And slowly, people were digging what I was doing. Slowly, it just kind of built up and built up and built up. And I decided to get really serious about it around 2006 or 7 or so. Actually, before that, I did self-publish a few books about like modifying guitar pedals. More than anything, just because there's so much information, well, especially now. Back then there was a lot of information about how to modify guitar pedals, but a lot of it was pretty heady. And I was noticing a lot of the questions were from, just average guitar players like me, and they didn't really want to know like all the details surrounding everything. They just simply wanted to know how to make their Boss DS1. How do I make it sound better? So I put together a book with a bunch of different pedals that had a few different modifications for each pedal. But eventually, the business slowly but surely showed me that it was not in writing books necessarily, even though I do still like to do that stuff whenever I have time, but more in creating products that people hopefully like and want to use, and bringing them to market. It's the question of passion. So I basically decided to do that full time rather than the business I was in, which at the time I was remodeling. So I had a remodeling crew. We'd go into houses and fix them up, and we'd do bath remodels and kitchen remodels. And while that stuff is okay, it's not bad. It's a decent job. Just didn't hit me right there. So I decided that I was going to jump in with both feet and make a pedal company. So the question about passions gets thrown around quite a bit, because that was my passion. Actually, guitar playing was my passion. Not necessarily building pedals, but working with guitar players, talking with guitar players. That was my passion. Talking about guitar gear. That's what I was passionate about. My main passion was actually playing, but pretty hard to make a living being a musician. Just being honest, it's pretty rough trying that. So I still, around my passion, around my interests, and around the things I was good at, I built this business, and that's now 10, 12 years later, here we are, and it's still going strong. And it's still fun. I guess I'm making this for a lot of my younger viewers who are, maybe they're getting ready to go to college, maybe they're just out of college, and they're trying to figure out, did I make the right decision by, becoming an accountant? Did I make the right decision by taking this series of courses in college to get me to this job that, now that I'm 22 years old, I don't think I want to do it anymore. Sure would love to do something I'm more passionate about. So that's a loaded word right there. So let's dig down into that just a little bit more. So I stumbled upon an article recently, and it was from it was written like in the Atlantic or some website like that. And basically the whole idea, the premise behind it was, it's a bad idea to follow your passions. And the reasoning behind it was well, I'll just say what they said. Okay, so basically, let's start with a quote by Paul O'Keefe. Paul actually plays guitar, believe it or not, and is assistant professor of psychology at Yale, so he's probably a brighter dude than I am. But anyways, I disagree with you, Paul, because you said, what are the consequences of following your passion? That means if you do something that feels like work, it means you don't love it. Nope, that's not what that means. That's not what that means at all. What that means, if you're trying to follow your passion, it means that you're doing something around that area. So you may not be a guitar player in Brad Paisley's band because that's what you really wanted to do, but you're decent enough at guitar and you know enough about tone and you know a little bit about electronics, and so you create something else that you still love, that you still wake up in the morning and enjoy doing, and you go to bed at night and you still look forward to the next day. That's what I would call working in your passion, Paul. Not necessarily thinking that if something feels like work, then you don't love it. Because there is a lot of work to it. There's a lot of work to anything that you do. And I'm sure if you are in that situation where you are doing what you love, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, let's go to the next point here that they make in this silly article. Okay, so oddly enough, again, for Paul O'Keefe, he had an example of a student who jumped from lab to lab trying to find one whose research topic felt like her passion. He said, it's this idea that if I'm not completely overwhelmed by emotion when I walk into a lab, then it won't be my passion or my interest. Paul, you're not getting it, my friend. You're not getting it. See, the lab work in general is the passion. It's not necessarily the type of lab work. That's more like a luxury. You know, I mean, I love overdrive pedals, but we've also made chorus pedals before and boost pedals. I don't love them necessarily, but I like pedals in general, so it's still my passion. So in the same way, the lab work in general, the science and chemistry and all that stuff, that's the passion, not the actual lab. So you're getting it wrong, my friend. Some guys from Stanford, again, college I went to, college of none, zero. So take that with a grain of salt. I would call this life experience. And screwing up a lot over the years, having started a bunch of different businesses and failed out a bunch of them, and kind of figuring out how to make it all work. So, and finding myself along that way. Carol Dweck and Greg Walton of Stanford recently performed a study that suggests it might be time to change the way we think about our interests. They say passions aren't found, they're developed. Yeah, they're developed from the things that you're interested in. So, and maybe this might apply to some of my audience. I know, again, this is not a guitar video, but this is more of a ranty, vloggy video, I guess you could call it. It is hard to find your passion. It is very hard to find, especially when you're young and you just simply don't know what you're good at or what you like to do. I mean, I always start with, what are the things that people ask you about the most? That kind of tells you what other people think that you're smart about. If people ask you a lot about how you do your makeup, well, you know what? That may be something that could be your passion. You may be passionate about that. You may not, but you might. You know, with me, it was guitar. I was passionate about guitar tones and guitar stuff in general. It's not like you just stumble on it. I mean, you try a bunch of different things, and you're always just reading things that you kind of get a paradigm of, you kind of get inside others' paradigm of the way that they live life and the way that they view life, and you say, oh, well, this guy, you know, is he's into sports physical therapy or whatever. That sounds interesting. Maybe I should take a look into that. And then maybe that, you know, dives off into somewhere else that you may find another interest along those lines, or maybe it doesn't, and you keep looking, but you just keep trying stuff. I firmly believe that there's nothing wrong with getting one job, trying it for a little bit. If you hate it, and especially, this is especially critical if you're young and you don't really have a whole lot of responsibilities. If you hate it, quit it and get something else. Cut your losses, cut them off, and do something else. Don't waste your time, because that time in your life is very critical in trying new things and trying to find the things that you're good at and that you actually care about. So I think that's quite important. So anyways, kind of a ranty video today. My apologies, but something that I've been asked quite a bit for the past month or two, especially going to NAMM and talking to people, and I was asked over and over, how did you get into this? What did you go to college? Surely you're an engineer, and why are you doing this? And quite honestly, I just answered all those questions. So anyways, hopefully this helps you. Hope you dig it. Hope you, maybe it makes you think. Maybe if you have a younger brother, nephew, cousin, aunt, uncle, friend, whatever, significant other, then maybe if they're struggling with the same thing, feel free to pass this along to them. Maybe it'll help them, maybe not. If you want to know a lot more about this, the person to check out is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's the master at stuff like this, the master of reverse engineering yourself to figure out what you can do. Because to me, the job market these days is not anything remotely like what our American school education system has taught us that it's like. For the most part, there's exceptions to the rule. There are people that go work for big pharmaceutical companies. They love it. They have a great time when, working in a cubicle, and it's just, they thrive on it. They love it. And that's awesome for them. Others, like me, that sounds like the definition of hell. So that's not even an option. Hope this helped you. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them below. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. More guitar videos coming very shortly. Yeah. Have a great week. See you later.